G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff Ukraine War Update for the 22nd of September 2025. I'm your host, the author David Applegate, author of the books The Boyhood of Cade, Power Games, Into the Osbound, and The Erratic Tales from the Empire Part 1, available now. Thank you to all those who support the channel. You can support the channel through the links in my link tree. Now, of course, there's the ongoing saga that's going on the sidelines. In fact, we get more news on the sidelines of the Ukraine war than we do the actual war. There has been a mass condemnation from many nations now believing that Russia did violate Estonian airspace, believing that it was deliberately provocative. And, of course, 2 German Eurofighters were scrambled, apparently, and German Air Force said it was an IL-M-20 reconnaissance plane with an escort. There were 3, not 2. There were 2 MiG-31s escorting the... and they were also equipped with ballistic missiles. This was a military drill, and claimed it was part of a broader pattern of escalation. Man, they're all rattling the cage, aren't they? They're all out there with their sabres. Of course, the ones waving the sabres don't do the fighting. They're the fortunate sons. But as there is going to be a meeting at the UN, and Russia's already addressed the UN Security Council, though there's no actual resolution published as of an hour ago, and still nothing, despite the meeting had wrapped up. It was a brief meeting, apparently. Weird for bureaucrats, right? Must have been half off on hookers down the road. Anyhow, Zelensky plans to meet Trump on the sidelines of the UN. This is a meeting at the General Assembly next week in New York. Of course he wants more sanctions on Russia. All he wants! Give me, give me, give me, give me. The little give me wants you to fight his wars for him. Because he's a little give me. Alright. Day 1306. Ukraine has made the same claims they have made for the last 1,305 days. Russia only attacks civilians. Russian drones only kill women and children. Russia's losing the war. Ukraine has struck a blow. Russian oil production yet again. Man, Russia's got no oil left, no troops left, no... Russia's on the verge of collapse, comrades. Just another round of sanctions. Of course, the bleating goes on about, geez, a couple of jets fly just within Estonian airspace along the coast, and they shit their pants. I mean... Oh, we got Captain Sky Shield. We need to defend European countries against Russian intense hostilities. What they do that's so hostile? They flew past us. Man, you crap your pants every time. Russians, when Zelensky has to pay, he checks under for Russians. Keir Starmer's cuddling his little Ukrainian teddy bear tight every night. He goes to bed, goes, please check under the bed for Putin. Now, there's allegedly some diplomacy going on, but it doesn't sound like it. Of course, they show you remember the car park they showed you? This is the 3rd time in a row they're showing you the same car park. Man, the Russians must really hate this car park. Oh, yes. Now we've got different news. Russians have finally made a breakthrough in Kostyantynivka. They've been probing now for weeks. And, of course, Ukraine comes out and says, let's bring out our cleanest soldier and stand him on a soundstage in front of this broken set and say some things, and then everybody will clap and like trained seals. Now, I don't know if it's the ADHD or the cocaine, but Zelensky's off his freaking rocker. But because until there's some actual adults, come on, Trump, put your foot down. Stand up to these morons, please. If America had stood up to Europe in 1914, we wouldn't have had World War II. If America hadn't abandoned Europe in 1924, we wouldn't have had World War II. Did I say World War II twice? I think you get the message. Korea. That was definitely Truman and the CIA. Vietnam. Again, Truman and the CIA. Are you starting to sense a pattern yet? It's over and over again. Politicians have been creeping us to war, and people who could have stopped it said, nah, it'll never happen. They're not that dumb, are they? Well, it turns out they freaking are, because they don't pay the price. Kitchener, the Haig, and all the other bloody morons of history. Now they get cheered as heroes because they won the war. Did they? I think the millions of young white men in graves won the war. And they paid the price for the war while the politicians took the glory, the money, and the women. Because that's what they do. Take. And like Muppets, everybody's too busy handing over everything to them because they're so ideologically captured by the idea that some freaking hero on a fucking pedestal is somehow better than them. Because he got some fancy letters after his name. Well, his PhD is in mugging you off, son. And the left, they keep running around screaming about Donald Trump is the end of the world because he won't go to war in Ukraine. What a bunch of bollocks. Now there's fighting in the buffer zone north of Sumy, drone attacks on Sumy. There is the usual fighting in the buffer zone north of Kharkiv, northeast of Kharkiv. The Russians have made significant advances in the buffer zone north of Kupiansk and a little bit of headway into Kupiansk. They've taken a couple of blocks and fighting continues as they there's fighting elsewhere with little to no consequence or impact. Well, perhaps not, because wherever there's other fighting, that means there's less troops to be fighting for Kupiansk, etc. Northern Lyman fighting his... there's fighting in Novolinskaya and Trendovny, and Russians have taken a town north. Taken a town. They've made advances in Zakrin, but they're outside of Seversk, the northeast of Seversk. They've made some advances on Kostovikia. The Russian artillery, they've brought up more artillery. They've pounded the city with artillery and surrounds. As I said, that was the point of this. I said weeks ago this would happen, that the Russians would push up to here to bring up more artillery and start harassing their supply lines. While they're working to cut off the supply lines to here, they're still fighting. There's still a big open road. The Russians have made some progress around Provosk. It's only some, it's only minor. Although they're hitting other areas on the front with long-range artillery. There's some advancing in the west, with another town falling to the Russians. This little area and this enclave remains in Ukrainian hands. There's been some, but very little progress at Ugiv. Now, apparently, of course, there's fighting over this road. The Ukrainians can't hold it, and the Russian incursions occur daily. Of course, Ukraine has conducted missile strikes on parts of Lugansk and Donetsk. Of course, they will say, we struck the occupiers. Well, there's been an attack on Sevastopol as a result of a drone attack on a resort. Nothing to do with the war whatsoever. But, Zelensky and his animalistic instincts. You want to hurt Putin? I strike out like a wild animal, and I want to attack his economy, because I want to prove that I am big man. And one of these days, a Russian missile is going to... Not a Russian missile. One of these days, they're going to say a Russian missile took him out, when in reality, they put a bullet in his head because he's no longer useful. They realise that the Russians are only keeping him alive because he's the biggest threat to Ukrainian security. And of course, to show you how inept, corrupt, and buffoonery, the level of buffoonery in Ukraine, and how petty they are, after being beaten by a Russian football star on the scoreboard, Ukraine's peacekeepers have put a Russian footballer on the list of undesirables after he scored his 31st goal, breaking some Ukrainian record, apparently. That's how petty Ukraine is. But, it's really about defending democracy. Just ask Antifa. You can trust them. Of course, you've got to wait down for them to stop cheering about Charlie Kirk to get a question in sideways, but Now, apparently, this guy's a pretty big footballer. He's been for the national team, played for St. Petersburg in the football club, won championships, left the club in 22. He plays as a striker in the Premier League. He's played for a number of teams. He just hurt their fifis, and they put him on a death list. A watch list. And that is incredibly petty. But of course, the pro-Ukrainians out there says, he's a threat to democracy! Now, this is an odd infighting. Zelensky's trashed an ally. Why? Because Victor said the quiet part out loud, and Zelensky says, you can't go around saying that. Told him to be quiet. In fact, he was called a useless, blissful idiot for claiming the conflict for Russia could only end after Kiev's forces capture Moscow. So, an ally of Zelensky has trashed an ally of Zelensky. Or a sort of ally. Both of them are useless, blissful idiots. march towards Moscow. Well, first, you got to stop. I mean, you got to realise that Ukraine has provoked Russia. And once you realise that, Ukraine's run by a bunch of warmongering idiots who don't know what they actually want. Do they want Russia out of Crimea? Do they want to negotiate an end to the war? They just don't seem to know what they want. So what they do is they try to damage as much of the Russian economy as they can, while biding time, hoping that the British or Americans will come to their rescue and send in F Troop. And then you'll really see the rockets and artillery fly. And then you'll really find out what it means for the Russian army to have 7,000 pieces of artillery, of which there's less than 1/4 in Ukraine. So whatever may be in the battlefield now is less than what they can bring to bear. They are holding back their best as a threat to Europe. That if Europe gets involved, Russia's prepared to glass Ukraine, Poland, and that's what they're doing. Every time the Germans make a provocative move, Russia reminds them that they can fly up to their borders. And then they cry like little bitches. You're supposed to stay here. Big fucker, what be here? Be a man. Man up for a change. Just sit there and go, so what? Any closer, we shoot them down. That's what you do. You act like a fucking man. You provoking war and then crying when the Russians respond makes you look like a useless, blissful idiot. That's what he is. I'm not saying he isn't, but the useful, blissful idiot, in this case, is calling the useless, blissful idiot a useful, blissful idiot. Has always been. Over the years, we started to forget of how much a useful, useless idiot he is. Well, you're just upset that he beat you too, saying the quiet part out loud. That Zelensky's end goal is to have Europe at his back as he marches on Moscow, declares himself Captain Sky Shield and the Miracle Conk Napoleon. I'm better than Napoleon, look at me! I'm standing on Red Square doing the Ukrainian vodka dance. And 5 minutes later, he wakes up as he hears this tremendous roar, and he looks west and says, geez, the sun is coming up, wait a minute, on the wrong side. People are, however, starting to realise that, wait a minute, Russia's serious. And we better not ignore international law. Because Russia has quietly reminded them that whatever you could do, whatever laws you break, what do you think? What about all your factories, eh? Sure, your factories in Africa, your factories in China, your factories in Southeast Asia, all those countries that don't like you, but tolerate your presence, who are they going to side with? Who's the Vietnamese going to side with if the Russians convince the Vietnamese that there's no coexistence, that Macron can any time decide to take their assets? What if it's your turn next? What if China puts the banhammer on Western Europe? Where your cheap clothes going to come from? Or your cheap electronics? Macron starting to realise that he's bitten off more than he could chew. He's starting to realise that China's playing for keeps. This ain't some silly tit-for-tat game anymore. This is the big leagues now, son. You start breaking international law and Xi Jinping is rubbing his hands together like it's Jewish Christmas. Hey? All your Christmases come at once, son. You could get to collect on a... Soros is going, oh wow, I get to collect all this mess and buy up everything cheap because I want to die a trillionaire. It ain't happening, son. You're not buying working factories cheap, you're buying scorched earth. Now, as I said, the Russians have advanced, but the town names are different and the locations are different and the website's failed. Correction. And the filer obeying, yeah. So they've admitted to this. Yeah. So is it the same? Yeah. It's a different one. It's close. So we'll just say they're probably one or two. This could be recent. But if not, it don't matter really. It doesn't mean much to us. There's like the big ones. Each one is closer. The big one will be: do they capture Lyman? My guess is no. They'll go through here first, but they are advancing. Okay, they're going to advance through here, by the looks of it. As I said, it would have probably... Normally you'd think they would have gone around and, spread through here. But of course they do have to be concerned about HIMARS and they have... That's one of the reasons why the Russian forces are slow and advancing. As you can see, this is a very packed, area full of small towns that run into each other. There ain't much actual... You look at Ukraine, it's actually quite densely packed. You get farmlands that go right up to the edge of an airport, and then there's right between a town. And it's not that big an airport, but it's just like one of... I think there's over 100 airports in Ukraine. Most of them tiny, just single strips. Some, of course, which are right now being used for yaks and MiGs. But more and more, they're running out of aircraft. I think they're down to 137. Although that number keeps changing because Poland is able to supply some Su-25s and MiG-27s, but only keeping up. They're not actually increasing the size of the Ukrainian Air Force. They're barely keeping up. And that's why they've had to rely on the F-16s. Though, again, there's no real evidence they're doing anything other than going after drones. They're staying out of the range of intermediate missiles. They're not worried about the long-range ones because they can be intercepted. Russia's tried before. They have tried a couple of times with long-range. They did catch a Ukrainian aircraft last month with a long-range missile. But most of the time, any attempts at long-range missiles is usually met with Ukrainian interceptors that take them out. Because long range, they can see him coming and respond in time. But as I said, you directly see that Russia's going to squeeze this out, but they're also going to pop this. And as you can see, there's no real push by the Russians to extend. Of course, each day it's a very slow advance. It's like watching molasses. But of course, the left are going to be hyperbolic. They talk about threats to democracy, and Russians going to be in Paris any day now, and you just can't take them seriously anymore. They're just delusional. If left to their own devices, the Ukraine war would be over in a month. Ukraine can't sustain these losses. They can't. They're reliant on everybody else. It's like you got this junkie, and as long as you keep feeding them their junk, they're not going to give up their habit. So while you feed Zelensky's habit, and remember, the same people who say we can't reward Putin want to reward Hamas. And by the way, the two-state solution in Palestine was put forward by Russia. And now suddenly Europe wants to enact the Russian peace deal in the Middle East, but not in Ukraine. I guess they're emboldened by the fact that Russia and China didn't come to Syria's rescue. But that's because they decided that you're going to learn your lesson the hard way. That Syria is a thorny mess of your own creation. So they dumped it on you to further give you a liability that you can't manage. But meanwhile, China and India and Russia are carving up Africa. So thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe. And please support the channel. You can support me on Patreon, of which I have two. One for my writing and one for an RPG based on my writing. And don't forget, buy my books, buy my merch. All my links in the link tree. Description below, in my profile, or scan the QR code on the screen now. Thank you for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you. Don't let the Russophobia bug bite you. Ukraine, Russia, what does it really matter? Not your country, right? Ukraine was China's ally. China abandoned them. Ukraine wants to put their hand in your pocket and stay there for 100 years. That's not a friend. Friends, don't move in, take all your stuff, and then say, oh, by the way, there's a bully outside, go deal with him. That's not a friend. Don't give me this garbage about a friend in need is a friend indeed. No. Stop that. Sun Tzu and all these other glib sayings that the left keep dragging up. Got to remember, at the end of the day, Sun Tzu lost to the Mongols. Bye for now.